Welcome, data people. We are Zuma. My name is Matt, and this is Data for Good. This podcast is brought to you by Zuma. Zuma is a dedicated recruitment company for senior data, insights, and analytics professionals, connecting you with Berlin's most influential companies. The Data for Good podcast is for the world of data analytics and engineering, giving you access to the thoughts and opinions of Berlin's most successful data people. Today, we are joined by Victoria Perez Mola, Solutions Architect at DBT Labs. Now, we've been looking forward to this episode, and I think it's well timed following on from the DBT conferences in the past week. Victoria is going to talk to us about the modern data stack, also sharing with us her journey into data and how we can encourage more people to do the same. Victoria, welcome. How are you?
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm good. Very happy to be here.
Good to hear. Yeah, it's our pleasure to have you on the pod today. You were at the event in London last week. How was it?
Very good. For the ones that don't know, DBT Labs host an annual conference called Coalesce. And this year was for the first time in person, 1 week in New Orleans, and then 1 day in London, 1 day in Sydney. And I went to the London chapter, and it was really nice to see all of the community in person that you normally interact via Slack. And then the talks were very interesting as well. I got to see a lot of understand a lot of what people are doing in data, what kind of challenges they're facing, and then also get to know vendors as well. What is in the data space out there? What are the new things and challenges?
Amazing. Yeah, I've seen it all over the place. So I think there's been a great bit of publicity there, and massive for the community as well.
Yeah, the community is huge. So I think that's definitely the most value you get out of it, is to get to know all these people that are doing the same thing you are, right? And they may be having the same challenges. So then you can brainstorm and understand what they're using, how they're using it.
Absolutely. And I think DBT has blown up in recent years. It's been a tool that a lot of people are making the most of, and it's making a lot of people's work within data a lot more enjoyable. So for those who don't know, when we talk about modern data stack, what do we mean by that?
So the modern data stack, we can describe it as a set of data tools or a tech stack that we've started to see in the last probably 7-10 years. And instead of having one single platform like we used to have before, and then it was very common to say you have everything in Microsoft or everything in Oracle, and then you do your whole transformations in there, we start to see more and more tools that target one specific use case within your data stack. So for example, DBT will help you with the transformations of that data. And then you would have some kind of tool like, let's say, Fivetran or Airbyte that will help you with the loading, the EL part. And then you'll have a VA tool on top of that. So you get to choose all these different pieces and kind of like put them together to make your modern data stack.
Okay, and why is it important that we move away from the more traditional methods and into this modern data stack?
So for me, the biggest benefit is that you get to choose the best tool for each purpose. And there's also more motivation for all of these tools to be the best one in the market. So there's a lot of motivation to be the best transformation tool, the best EL tool, the best BI tool. And they focus in that one thing rather than covering the whole spectrum of things that you have to do with data. And all of this competition, this healthy competition, pushes that those tools to be better. This is something that open source had a lot of impact in the past few years, like many of these tools that we're seeing and that are part of the modern data stack, they have at a certain extent some kind of like open source part, whether it's like a core or something like that. They do have that component. And that, of course, helps to grow the community and gives a lot of people the chance to work with a modern data stack from before. Before, when I started working, for example, then I needed to get a job to start working with Microsoft SQL Server. For example, we like the real use case, and the real tools, because it's a very expensive tool. You cannot really do it as a student.
Nice. So this healthy competition is allowing us to use tools that are ever evolving, developing, and getting better. You mentioned open source there. So it's a practice that maybe software development has been doing very well for many years. So how is it different? How is it the same within data, and how are we utilizing open source?
Yeah, I think, as you were saying, it's not something that it's directly something that data is doing. It's something that has been in software engineering for a while. But it feels like data was a little bit behind of the software engineering practices. Now data is taking all the importance as well. So then it's starting to bring all the things that existed, like the good software engineering practices as well, the open source communities and all of that, to this side. Because before, given this platform, now that it was someone else was doing the contract, let's say. So let's say your CTO would do a contract with a platform, and then we just use everything out of this vendor. And right now, the actual data people that are working with the data had these chances to select the tools. And again, guys, with the healthy competition and the fact, I think the open source, one of the main benefits is the community as well, that you don't see such a community around proprietary software normally. And that also helps a lot to learn, to provide more feedback as well on the tools, and helps as well on the other side.
Definitely. I think data as a community, there's a lot of unfilled potential within data. I think we're at the awareness stage. So most people are aware of it, but we're still pushing towards acceptance. And I think open source, by the sounds of things, is really helping that and building that community so we can evolve as a data space. With the modern data stack, we are seeing the emergence of new roles, new responsibilities compared to traditional positions within a company. Analytics engineer is something that is very close to you, Victoria. So tell us a little bit about analytics engineering and how it's evolved.
I really like the story of Spotify. They posted this in a blog probably like 2 years ago. And I think that describes exactly what is happening with analytics engineer, and then it's happening as well with a lot of roles. They found out that they needed a person to do something very specific in their data team, which was to be kind of like in the middle of the data engineers, but then still had that business awareness and understanding that the data analytics had. So combine the good software engineering practices that the data engineers had the knowledge for and apply it to the business logic. They didn't have a role for it or anything like that, didn't fully existed as a role per se. And then they just posted something, they put a job opening, and then they kind of like invented a title. And that's how they found their first analytics engineer. It was not analytics engineering, the title. That is like, even in the blog, the person that got that first job then said, this is a terrible title. And then they eventually changed it. And a lot of the blogs that were published like 3 years or something like that is fairly new. It goes exactly to that, right? Like data engineering is too broad in many companies, and the same is happening with data analysts. Depending on the company and how big it is and how technical the people are in and the tools they're using, it can be that as a data analyst, you're doing a graph in a spreadsheet, or you're just using a BI tool, or on top of that, you're editing your own pipelines. As the level, so the standards, they're higher in terms of tooling, but then as well as the data quality, the insights that we want to get out of it, and all of this, then the kind of work that we're doing in data has increased in complexity as well and in good practices. Then it goes with it that we start defining more and more those roles, right? And then we start defining those lines as well. And that's how analytics engineers come into the market, I think.
Yeah, it was a grey area previously, and I think it's a bit more defined now. And as a industry, we are getting better
Yeah,
at
exactly.
aligning responsibilities. Like you mentioned, a data analyst previously, you could be doing what would be a data engineer at another company. So yeah, I agree. I think we are getting much better at aligning these responsibilities. Now, you were previously an analytics engineer.
Yeah.
How did you get into that specific position?
So it was a bit by chance, but for me, in my background, I studied computer science back in Argentina, so it's systems engineering, and I knew that I wanted to work with databases, but at that time, like that was not something that you could really get a role at back in Argentina and the city I was living in and all of that. So then I started working with ERP systems. So I was still doing some kind of BI. So I was working a lot with databases, doing the reporting, setting up like whatever store procedures, anything, writing all the SQL. And when I came to Berlin, I started to move more and more specific into the BI. So I was working in data warehousing, and then I applied to like a BI position.
Yeah.
I don't even recall. And because of COVID, that application kind of like got delayed. And by the time they were finally able to hand me the offer, they were like, oh, by the way, this is going to be called analytics engineer from now on. And that's how I end up as an analytics engineer. But for people that want to get into analytics engineering, which I think now is more of an active choice, rather than just and then as analytics engineer. I think you can either come from both ways. So it's something that we see a lot in data, right? You either come from the good software engineering practices, meaning you start computer science, and then you just get more into the business side of things. So start understanding a little bit more about, I don't know, what is revenue in a company, or I don't know, if you're into marketing, then try to get more into marketing. If you like ops, so try to find a little bit of that side. And then the other option is you come from more of the business side. The natural progression would be probably going to a data analyst role, and then you start getting deeper into the good software engineering practices. So start reading about modeling books, start reading about, I don't know, query optimization, all this kind of things.
Yeah, I think careers are developing that you don't have to stay in your specific niche for many, many years. I think we are seeing that people are exploring a lot earlier in their career. Someone, for example, who didn't take the technical route, didn't go to university and study computer science. However, they may be a very much technical person, have got into a business and are looking over towards the technical teams and thinking, I'd be interested in digging deeper into that. And it sounds like data analysts and analytics engineer is a good first step for these people.
Yeah, definitely. If you're a technical person, but you still have like that knowledge of the business and you like it, of course, then that's a great thing to get started, because you get like a mix of both things. Yeah. And it's really good. I mean, I guess the best advice is like IT is probably one of the most professions where you get people that didn't really went to university for it. So you get like a nice mix of people that went to university and that didn't, and that's fine, and that's really good, and it's very valuable, very rich, because you get to learn a lot, right?
Exactly. And I think also on the other side, if you're a technical person and you took that path, you went with your decision to go down a technical studies at university, you're not locked in to the specific hardcore technical roles. You can open up to business positions if you have got that, I guess, business mindset and thoughts. Would you agree?
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Like if you like IT, if you like development and all of that, and you're thinking about going to a technical kind of like study computer science or something like that, definitely know that you're not you don't have to be developing and making code the whole time. You have a lot of options, and you can always steer down and specialize into a line of business that you like the most. Yeah.
Amazing. And in your experience, what are the barriers, or what did you have to get through to get where you are today?
Yeah, I think, well, definitely one of the barriers was for me that I didn't have the role I specifically wanted, or I also didn't know that much. I don't feel there was much out there, because that is something that wasn't really developed back in Argentina. So trying to find my way and steer like my career into what I wanted, that was definitely one of the barriers that I had to overcome. And then probably the learning that I get to it is like, you can always change, and you can always find, and it's okay to learn what you want to get out of a job, and that's really nice. And then probably the biggest barrier was the decision to study computer science.
Yeah.
Because in my idea, computer science was like, I don't know, men. And you see that a lot in university as well. Like, I was the only one in the classroom. I like sometimes like teachers, or professors, they somehow lean more over the men's solution.
Yeah.
Like, hopefully that is not like that anymore. But that's definitely, it feels a little bit like you're being blocked the whole time, and to keep going. And it helped me a lot that my family was very, very supportive always.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more accessible. And it's good that we have these conversations so that people aren't put off. That's the way it was. I think it's well known that IT was a very male-dominated space, but the way that these IT roles are becoming more open, that women can follow that if that's a career that they want to choose. And also, geography-wise, you've moved away from Argentina to pursue a career. How difficult was that for you?
Well, I guess normally, like normal amount of difficulty. Yeah, it's definitely the first year is tough, because you need to create, you come from a whole circle, and then you don't realize that you've been building that circle for your whole life. Like the friends you have, the family you have, like the places you go, you build in all that your whole time, and that applies also to work. And then at the beginning here, nobody knows you. So then you sit in front of someone, and you need to learn how to make your CV, how to, I don't know, cover letter. The whole application process is very different. You need to learn that. But then on top of that, you also need to build your structure around it. So kind of like your social network around it to support you as well whenever you're having rejections and stuff like that, which is very tough. But I think overall I was lucky in that sense. I was able to get the job and all of that.
I'm going to loop back a little bit here. So community. So maybe traditionally you'd have your team, and that's all you would know. You'd have your manager to learn from, and maybe a couple of seniors. But we now have guilds within companies, especially larger companies, and also the Berlin community, and then even bigger, the data community. How much of a vital part has this played in your development and your career?
Oh, a lot. Especially since I came in Berlin. Like, again, in Argentina, that's maybe not super big community-wise. Like, there are not things like meetups. And then when I started here, I went to a lot of meetups. I attended a lot of events. And I would definitely encourage anyone to do that. It helps a lot, because you just go out there and you meet these people and understand what they're doing. And without even asking, you get feedback as well, because then you can understand how the things work in this new place, how these things work. So probably if you want to steer your career a little bit, or if you think, especially this happen if this is your first job, and then sometimes you don't really know how things are because you don't have nothing to compare, definitely go out there and listen to people, ask them what they're doing, how they're doing. Like, getting closer to the people that are doing what you want to do helps a lot. And it's always useful to see what resources people share, what kind of learning, how do they approach their learning, how do they approach their careers.
Yeah, and I think data as a community is very, very, very good at that. And data doesn't lie, I suppose. So it's a great leveler, and it's open to a lot of people and a lot of different backgrounds, etc. What was your first memory of data, out of curiosity, if you can think right back?
My first memory of data, like
so for me, example, I was very big in sports, so like goals scored and these kind of numbers and analyzing this. The reason I ask, I'm trying to think of people might be interested in data but not realize. So
oh yes.
So what are your kind of first memories of data?
This is hard. I don't have one specific memory like you would. But my parents are accountants, and this may explain the part of why analytics engineering and why like I lean always to the business side and all of that. Is like my parents, they're accountants, and I've always felt very, very close to what they do. And I've been working with them. They have their private practice, and I worked for them for many, many years. During the summers and help as well and all of that. So probably that's my closest like memory to data, like working. You as an accountant, you work with data, like even though if you don't realize you work with data, like you're doing data entry, you're then analyzing the data that entry, like to understand where did all the things go. You then do even a bigger picture analysis. So yeah, and I learned a lot about how to use Excel, for example, and formulas and stuff like, which is coding as well to a certain extent, of course. So definitely that's my first memory, like real memory of data as we know it.
Yeah, you've probably not thought like that before, but I think you telling that story, you were like, of course. No wonder I've ended up in analytics.
Yeah, true. I've never really made that connection.
Well, there we go. And I think it can come from anywhere. So data is going strength to strength. I think it's going to be a huge part, not only in business, but in people's lives as we move forward. Yeah. So how can we encourage more people to take that leap into data?
Definitely, there's a lot of free resources out there. So showing the community what we were talking before, even though if you're not super convinced, just join, and then you see what someone else is doing, and if that excites you, then that's a very good sign. Try to do that. Like there's sometimes like meetups where there's a lot of like case stories, like a use case story, like we did this project or stuff like that. Try to go to those, and then you get to see that. And if that excites you, if you want to know more about that, then that's already a good start. And then try to do something like that, and try to find something that you'd like, something like you were saying, sports, for example. Try to find something like that, and then build your project. I don't know, you have a Fitbit or whatever, like a smartwatch or something like that. Maybe that's a really cool project, and you want to calculate your sleep depth or something like that. And you can build nowadays, as we were saying with the open source and all of this, you can build your own tech stack from end to end. And that's a great practice. And don't feel afraid of reaching out to people. Mm-hmm. A lot of people reach out to me, like asking me about advice and stuff like that, and it's really nice for me. I follow up with people for like, maybe I met people for like a year or two, and I've only met them via LinkedIn, and we talk every now and then, and they tell me when they're looking for a job or something like that, or when they're facing some kind of career. Like, definitely approach to people, and don't be afraid of, if you see someone and it seems inspiring to you, their story, mm-hmm. then definitely do that. And in my experience, most people, they reply, and they'll be very much willing to say something nice to you, like something that could be helpful. I've reached out to people. I've been like, hey, what kind of books have you read, or things like that, when I don't know, for example, what I should be learning next. And in general, and worst case, they just don't reply. You don't lose anything.
No, exactly. I think we have to put out a warning here, though, because once you get a taste for data, it can be very addictive, and you can spend many, many years understanding. You can get right into it, and it's, as we see with a lot of people, it tells stories and understanding, and I think it's knowledge is power, and data provides really good insights and knowledge for decisions, and it can make you think differently, right?
You approach your day-to-day in a different way. I see it the way, like, I reorganize my kitchen, and like I iterate on the usage and things like that. Like, it seems so stupid, but it definitely changes the way you think and you approach your day-to-day things as well.
We are very similar in that way. I'm always rearranging and changing things. So if I am maybe a female software engineer, I really want to get into data, from your experience and your work, how do we facilitate and encourage to pursue it? And I think what I'm leaning towards here is, if males are 60% matching the job description, they tend to apply. Females more need to be 90%, but they shouldn't be. If they have a passion for something, the technical side can be learned. It's all about domain knowledge and the passion. So how can we facilitate more women to get into data and push on these great opportunities?
I think for me, what I personally do, and I would encourage more women specifically try to do this, or any person that kind of like falls outside of the typical stereotype of the person in tech. Try to go out there and talk and go to, I mean, showing the community, but maybe from the other side as well, right? Like, to get to understand as well. And there's a lot that you can learn as well from people that are starting. So for me, being in something like this, like going to talk to a conference or stuff like that, I feel like I'm setting some kind of example in a way. Like, people can see me, and then they are like, oh, hey, there's people like me as well that's out there. And that's the same way I feel when I see a woman in, like, talking out there in a conference, and I feel very close to it. Like, oh, this is a person that is doing a similar thing than me. This is an option that I also have. So that's definitely one. And then internally try to push. So let's say you're working on a data team, and then you have a more or less like mid or more senior position, then encourage these people as well, right, to do that. So women tend to not ask so much for like a promotion or for a raise or things like that. As you were saying, they don't apply as much. So I think what we can do is try to make them feel, okay, you're really good at what you're doing, or you did like this project very good. What I try to do, for example, is find interesting projects that someone else did, and it's like, you should write a blog about this. I'll coach you. I'll help you. Like, I'll put my time, and then I'll help you on this one. Basically try to elevate others. And it doesn't necessarily have to be women, but I feel like sometimes they do need more support because of what you were saying, right? A lot of time, there are two things that you hear a lot from women. One is, if you go to people and you ask them, what's like your dream role? A man is going to tell you, I want to be CTO. A woman is going to tell you, I want to get into the senior position of the role they're already in. Mm-hmm. So definitely try to encourage that. And then the other thing is that when they're looking for a job, then men are just applying, as you were saying. And then women tend to be in on a stage that takes them like 1 to 3 months, which is, I'm preparing to apply. And they study and study and study and study. And the reality is that you'll never be able to apply, because then you go to your job interview and then they ask you something completely off track, kind of.
Yeah.
So definitely trust more. And what you can do from the other side is make these people trust more in themselves.
Absolutely. I think, like we say, data is a good leveler, and maybe we can use some of these insights to see when someone's doing well, and maybe not wait and propose it to them, and try and help do so. Yeah, great advice. And I must say, it's great to see the work that you do as in the community and supporting this. Time has flown. It's been a great conversation, but let's wrap it up with a final question. What is it that keeps you motivated in data, and what drives you to keep learning?
I think what drives me the most is that as technology gets more complex, but complex in a good sense, right? Like it's complex because the standards are higher. Their new problems get more complex. And well, I love solving problems. I mean, I'm an engineer after all. So that's the one thing that keeps me all the time, like want to solve those problems and want to understand those problems. What are the problems that are there? And I want to solve them. So that's my motivation.
Amazing. And that's the beautiful thing about problems. When you solve one, another one appears.
Yeah. So you'll always have a problem.
Always
You'll
have
never get bored.
Definitely not. Definitely not. Well, you've taught us a lot today, and we could have spoken for a lot longer. I think these topics lead nicely onto a future podcast, and we would love to have you on again in the future, but that's all we have time for today. Thank you very much for your time and your rich insights, Victoria. It's been educational and a lot of good wisdom that you shared with us. To the listeners, as always, drop your questions and feedback into the comments section, and we'll pick some out to be answered on future pods. And please don't forget to like and share so we can get the message out and reach as many people as possible. But from myself and Victoria, it's bye. Thank you once again.
Yes, thank you for having me. It was a great conversation.
Amazing. Glad you enjoyed it. It's been an honor having you on. So everyone, ciao for now.